you... No, it's still not working, Gina. Anyway, keep working on it. I'll get going. Yeah, so if you do miss lessons, I can send you a private message with a link to the YouTube. That's my plan. So I was fooling around with it this afternoon. I haven't used YouTube for a couple of years and had to get into it again. So I think that's going to work okay. Yeah, so if you do miss a lesson, I can send you a link. Yeah, and I'll try to write a little summary each week of what we covered as well to the group. So in terms of the group, just to remind you, if you haven't joined it yet, and some of you haven't, there's a Facebook group. And that's the name of the Facebook group. And it's got a quite long name there. You need to write that down, get the spelling right and search for it in Facebook and join it, because that's our main point of communication. So as I said, like summaries of lessons that we've covered, and even ongoing discussion. Like I would welcome ongoing discussion around stuff. If you have some thought and you didn't get time to express it in class, write a little note to the group and let's get a bit of a culture of chat and conversation about some of the language issues, some of the cultural issues that are being raised in the class. Quite happy for that to continue. I mean, that's sort of part of the class. As I've said to you, the class isn't just this class time. The class is sort of beyond that. I mean, the point of what we do in here is to sharpen your capacities for language learning outside the classroom. So part of that is, observing something, making a little interesting note about something you've observed, other people joining in, all that kind of thing, That's kind of interesting, and I'm happy to participate in that if you are. So let's do it. But yeah, that's our main point of contact and group communication, and private message is probably the best way to go rather than emails or phone messages or something. I mean, if you need to, yes, but that just centralises it all, and probably that's the way you would ensure I get in contact with you the quickest. All right. What we're going to do now is have a look at writing. So, and that's based on what people wrote in the last lesson, the last couple of lessons. So I'm just going to give back some works. If you could hand that back, separate out the back there, please. Kate go up the back. So Skypers, if you've done this writing, this is the collocations work, Yvonne.
That's mine, I guess.
Natalie. Yes. Chris. Chien's not here. Okay. Hyunju. There we are. Zara not here. One. Is that yours? Yes. Good. Okay, now not everybody did that, but I'll just explain what it was if we're not here. We read an article about the Royal Commission, something happening in Australia, Banking Royal Commission, and what we practiced was reading it for a particular thing, something that I think is very important in language learning, central. Collocations. Collocations, so words that frequently go together. Yeah, so another example, I've used it with diploma people, the sea, it's got a lot of waves on it. Wavy sea. That's logical, isn't it? But no English speaker says it. You don't look out at the sea and say, oh, that's wavy, I won't go for a swim. You say it's rough. Right, rough sea. That's the collocation for that kind of thing when the waves are too big. Yeah. Smooth sea. What do you reckon the opposite? Smooth? Because we've said collocation is rough. Logically, opposite of rough is smooth, right? Ah, smooth sea today. Cool or uncool? Uncool. Right, we don't say it. Everyone would know what you mean. What do we say? Calm. Calm sea. Yeah. So, yeah, language is not just knowing lots of individual vocabulary, words, and then using grammar and logic. English is not always logical. Your native language is not always logical. People get into these patterns, and you just receive these patterns in childhood, and you reproduce them. That's the way it is, I mean, there is a logic to that. Rough, it's metaphorical, isn't it? It's like the shape of it is, if that was like a table, it would feel rough. So there's a metaphor there, and that's the key thing I've mentioned before a lot, and we're going to talk a lot about metaphor, because language, most of language is metaphor. And you're studying a language. We need to understand this stuff of language, what it is. Every human language is metaphor. What is metaphor? Where we say X equals Y, there's some sort of equivalence. So in this case, the sea, it is equivalent to a rough surface. It's a poetic equivalence. A lot of poetry, of course, is where we see metaphor foregrounded, it's emphasised, and it's done in a creative way and we appreciate it. But actually, most of our everyday language, unbeknown to us, like unknown, is actually most of it's metaphorical. And so when you're dealing with a language problem, and we'll get to it when we do guessing tonight, think metaphor, think metaphor, think metaphor. A lot of the time it will help you unlock what you're dealing with. What you're grappling with, I was going to say. Grapple is like to struggle, like a wrestler. Think of the word grab, change it to a p. B and p, very close in the mouth. Grapple, so you grapple with a problem. Yeah. You grapple with something, ST something. So that's a metaphor, isn't it? I mean, they're just everywhere. If you take any sentence I speak, there's metaphor in it. So it's an incredibly important concept to get control of. So when we're talking about rough sea, wavy sea, wavy is more the opposite of metaphorical. Let's put the adjective. Metaphorical is the opposite. Literal. Literal means real, like it actually real. It's not poetic. It's like what really physically happened or exists. So the sea is literally wavy, but we don't say that. We use a metaphor, and the metaphor is a collocation. It's a rough sea. And calm. Well, calm's more about people, isn't it? Really calm emotion. We say the sea is calm, like we impose emotions on the sea. It's a metaphor. Smooth is actually more literal, I think. But even that one is metaphorical. So, So what this class is about, a lot of it, is throwing out concepts, categories, which become tools and ways of you develop a toolbox so that when you encounter words, phrases, grammatical issues, you can grapple with that problem more effectively. So we looked at this article and we underlined collocations and we collected many, and then each person made an individual decision about which ones were more important to them, which ones were more useful, and you practice writing those, and you practice writing a little summary of the article using those 4 or 5 collocations. Okay, that's what you've got back. Now what you've got back in most cases is something that looks a bit strange, and perhaps you've seen it before. It's got sometimes I've corrected it, but a lot of the time I've written these codes on it, and I want to diploma people have seen this code system before, but others will not. So you could just pass those around and perhaps pass those. Could you just pass those back? Thanks. And Skypers, we're using that one, okay? I sent that to the Tandan Young group some time ago, So, okay, the philosophy behind this, the reason why I don't just correct stuff, I give you a clue about the category of error, the kind of error you're making in your writing, and you've got to do a bit of thinking, not necessarily by yourself, with others. I mean, that's part of the advantage of being here together in the class, or Skype us together on Skype. You've got 100 words there, or some of you have. Okay, it's got a WO next to it. It means word order. There's something wrong with your word order in these 3 words or 4 words or 2 words. You've got to try to figure it out. Now again, it's like what I was saying last week. If you put in the mental effort and you have to puzzle about it, and you know it's confusing and difficult and you have to struggle with it, and then someone, either you understand it finally or somebody else suggests an answer, oh yeah, right, that's going to go in deeper, you're going to remember it better. So that's the point of doing it this way. And over the years I think I've noticed that it does seem to work. You need to know the meaning of these sort of things. Let's go through them very quickly. SP, spelling issue. P, punctuation or capitals. So, can I speak English has got a number of problems there, hasn't it? Capital C, capital I, capital E, and question mark, yeah. So it could be capitals, could be full stops, punctuation, semicolons, commas, anything. T is a tense. He came yesterday. VF, something wrong with the verb form. It's, in this case, it's missing what we call an auxiliary, the little helping word, not the main verb, but the
driving.
Yeah, is auxiliary. Now, the most common auxiliaries are be and have in English. And he is driving. She has written the novel. Okay. But it could be more than that. It could, sure, no worries. It could be passive. If you've written it in a passive and it should be active, I'll put VF. It's something to do with the verb. Yeah? So you've probably got the right tense, but there's something about the verb form that needs a bit of work. It could be, the other thing is, and it's going to come up tonight, it could be the difference between an infinitive and the gerund. At an advanced level, in some cases that's a little bit tricky. I think you'll recognise that problem. Yeah. So that's what we call the gerund, where we have ing to make a noun, and this is your infinitive, just in case you're not familiar with those grammatical terms. So, you might have written that and it should be that, or that and it should be that. All of those things come under VF. Please yell out if there's any moment that you need clarified. N is number. I bought lots of apple. Zzz, isn't it? S, plural, plural. Very, very common, even at this level. Especially people who don't have plurals in their native language, just forgetting the occasional plural. It could be, and a big issue here for advanced people, countable and uncountable nouns. Oh, I've lost my luggages. Nope, you've lost your luggage, haven't you? And the one we did last week, softwares. Well, there are 3 good softwares. Can't say it, can you? 3 good bits of software, 3 good programs. So countable and uncountable is a tricky area. So it kind of comes in there. A, article, a really tricky one. You can catch a bus or the bus depending on the context. So it could be a, an, the, or nothing. You might have put a the and it shouldn't be there. Right? Any of those problems. So that capital A does not mean it means article problem. You might have actually written an but it's wrong. Okay. PR, preposition, the things everybody loves so much in English, come to. Yeah. Word order we've covered. I like oranges very much. Yeah. WW, wrong word. Yeah, this is a bit like like the collocation I was mentioning. Today it's shiny. That kind of sounds logical. The sun's shining, yeah, but we don't say it. Today is sunny. Yeah, sunny. P.S. Part of speech. You've got the right word, pain, but should be painful. Right? You've got the noun instead of the adjective. So that's what we call part of speech. Noun, verb, adjective, and adverb. Can you just write adverb in there? It's missing. Usually it's only those. I mean, there are other grammatical categories, but those are the usual ones that get mixed up. That little arrowhead, omission, from the word omit, to leave out. Don't mix it up with this one. Omit, to send out. Omit and omit. Right? Those sound both pretty similar, because especially Australians tend to do this with their pronunciation. They go on that sound is called the name. The name of that sound, very important sound in English because it's the most common verb, the schwa. So I want to use that word a lot of the time, the schwa, that sound, upside down E is how you write it. Look, I may as well, while we're on that, just resources for the class generally. Why don't we all make sure we've got one of these phonemic charts, right? Guys, Skype's phonemic charts, yeah. So that, you know, if we're reading out or I'm referring to pronunciation or whatever. So, you got that one? I think I posted that one to the group. I took a photo of it and sent it to the Skype. I think. If not, please, Skype, send me a note and I can send it to you either later tonight or tomorrow, alright? I think it's in that Tundang younger group, but it may not be, alright? I do overlook things, so please send me a reminder. Thanks. Okay, so you can see the little schwa there. It's in the vowels. That one there. Look at the words underneath. It tells you how to pronounce silver. That sound. Silver. And Australians use it a lot. It's the most common vowel in English, whether it's American, Canadian, South African, New Zealand, Australia, Britain. But Australians then, with their accent, you know, shift some other vowels even over to the sound. So it's very, very common. So omit and omit, you'll hear the same, and the only way to tell it is context, if someone's speaking. So here, omit, to leave out, he is tall. Right? In many languages, you don't need that, do you? Especially Asian languages, you don't say is, you just he, tall. Right? But, so you've got to remember to do it in English. SS is not the Nazi Einsatzgruppen, it's sentence structure. I'll tell you how you can come to. So it's word order plus other words, and you know, just needs a bit of surgery. Slash or NP, paragraph. Just where you're changing a topic, you need to break, give the reader a bit of a break. Question mark, yeah, I give up, I don't understand. Now, there are some other ones. There are some others, and let's write them up, because that's an old list and I don't have the new version. I added some more to that. Alright, subject-verb agreement. So there's a common sort of error, forgetting that third person singular S. It's probably the most common sort of error. So if I write SVA, check out your subject, check out your verb. There's probably some mismatch. A mismatch, you know the word match, things go together. A mismatch. There's a mismatch between the subject and the verb. Alright, SL, slang. Slang's fine if you're writing emails to friends and, on Facebook and whatever, chatting casually in text, no worries, mate. Alright? But for formal writing, of course, you've got to avoid it in any language. SL, we're not always sensitive to what's slang and what's not. Slang is just the very, very, very spoken end of the language, which usually doesn't get written down. Right? That's slang. Part of it's sort of related to this. It's a spoken written problem. So you might use a word and it's not really slang, but it just sounds a bit too spoken. We might use the word a lot in speech, but in writing we tend to avoid it. So it's not really slang, it's not as extreme as slang, but it's still sounding a bit too casual, a bit too spoken. And we're going to, again, look at that tonight as well. There's a few examples. Basically what I like to do is from people's writing, gather up, not every error, but those errors that I know over the years I'm experienced enough to know, these things happen a lot to people, and collect them. And I've got a collection, a couple of pages here. And I'm going to put up sentences on the board, and you're going to try and figure out how they need correcting. Right? So we're going to do a bit of a writing workshop there. And yeah, we'll get a few of these issues come up, and you'll see the sort of thing I mean. And there was one more. Right. This word, red, is short for redundant. Redundant means unnecessary, no longer needed. We use it in employment. It's a nice way of saying someone got sacked. Oh, she was made redundant from the factory or from the office. They said, bye-bye, that's it. She's unnecessary. But we use the term a lot in writing. In speaking, there are a lot of redundancies because people are speaking and thinking at the same time, and it's much more disorganised in every language. Writing's got to be more organised. It's got to be tighter. Reading's harder than listening in a conversation to people. People want to do the least reading possible for the most information. So when you write very effectively, that's a key word for writing. Succinct. Succinct means lots of information, not many words. Right? Really efficient writing. Succinct. That's your aim. With, I think, pretty much all writing. You don't want to waste your time and others writing extra words, redundant words, unnecessary words. So the tighter, sharper, punchier you can get it, the better. All of that makes it succinct. Yeah. So those are some other codes that, if you could just add those under the list. Yeah. So you've got either you yourself or someone at your table has got a piece of writing returned. Yeah. Is at least one? Not here, I think. If you can get yourself at a table where there is some writing that's been returned, so you've got something to discuss, okay? So if it's your piece of writing, please share it with others. You'll have a code on WO, PR, preposition. Right, 5 or 10 minutes just thinking through what is the answer and have a bit of a chat about it and get other people's assistance and help and see how far you can get in figuring out the answers. Right, any questions? Yeah.
Well, the slang
Yeah.
rip off, ripping off.
Rip off, yeah.
As in
Slang.
This
But
corruption
he usually
of
is
content.
article,
Well, he's a naughty boy, isn't he?
so it's not. It's not.
That's a good point. Like newspapers,
Maybe the dark side of
they're on a spectrum. And I've mentioned before, I think a week or two ago, that the advertiser is very much like how you speak. That maximises readership. It's really easy to read it because it's like people speak, and low-level literacy.
So, is it wrong?
You'll increase your market. So
market.
Therefore,
Market operation.
now that's from The Guardian, which is a kind of a bit higher. But nevertheless, some writers, some journalists, here's the collocation, they adopt a conversational tone. So when you adopt a conversational tone, even though it's a bit more formal, you're just making it easier, more friendly, more conversational, right? So yeah, so he has used the word rip-off. So this is what you're going to have to get sensitive to as a reader, isn't it? When you're reading something, is he speaking totally formally or not? And that's often really hard to tell. And most of The Guardian is fairly formal. It's kind of less usual, maybe 20% where they might do that. And it's hard to know if you're coming into second language. But yeah, so that is a bit of slang.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Yeah.
When it comes to fiction, well,
Yeah,
for poets or novel writers, one of their jobs would be creating a new expression.
yeah.
Creating
New expressions, yes.
So it might be out of the existing cognition.
Indeed,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So
Yeah.
when sometimes we fail to,
Renfrey, do you need to go for it, mate? Whatever you need to do.
sometimes we get some wrong information regarding collocations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Fictional writing, depending on the writer, if they're creative with the language, they can produce new and interesting words, and the native or the high-level reader thinks, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, you know. That's a fresh way of saying it. They're creating fresh, creative structures. And as a non-native, that's hard to know. Yeah. And, you know, again, I think the other week I said every writer has their own sort of fingerprint. It's like their style. And some writers, like I was saying the other day, like Licia, we were talking about Harry Potter. And I was saying J.K. Rowling, although she uses a very broad vocabulary, she's fairly conventional in the way she'll use that. So it will all be usual collocations. But you'll get other writers like Ray Bradbury, science fiction writer, and he's sort of semi-poetic, and he'll throw in these really kind of interesting, you know, kind of twisted structures, which are really quite beautiful. So depends who you read. So what I would advise, I don't know. There's no list of writers like, you know, who's strongly collocational and who's not. I think you're just going to have to get a sense of that.
Philip Adams.
Yeah, well, good point. Where would you say Philip Adams lies on that spectrum?
He used collocation pretty heavily every time, and metaphors as well.
He does, but the thing about Philip Adams, he plays around with them a lot, and he reverses idioms and changes them and breaks them, and like there's at least a dozen of those in every like 300-400 word piece he writes. So I'd say he's one of the most sort of creative writers on that pure language level. So if you read Philip Adams, if you don't know Philip Adams, a regular columnist in the Australian, I wouldn't take your clues from Philip Adams because, I mean, look, what happens, of course, is creative writers in every language, creative writers invent these things, and then people love them and they use them, don't they? Now, you know, huge numbers of expressions. Who's the writer who's contributed most expressions? The one person to English? Yeah, Shakespeare. Yeah. So in terms of English idiom, the three main sources are the Bible, the British Navy, and people working on ships. Lots of metaphors about knowing the ropes and all hands on deck and loose cannons and all that stuff. That's all from the Navy. Because let's face it, who was the biggest imperialist nation for the last 300 years? Right? The English. Right? They invaded all but 22 countries. And how did they do it? They did it on boats, right? It was the naval power that was their military projection, right? So you had millions of people over about 300 years on boats. So that affected the language. So they make up creative idioms, just sailing around. And this goes into the language. So those two sources, but third source, a single individual, Shakespeare, invented, you know, hundreds of idioms just through his own creativity. Some of it he was the first to record it. Others it's pretty clear he created them himself. Right? So yeah, some creative writers will actually create these things and then they become collocations. Right? But before they are collocations, it's a bit tricky. Like Philip Adams, you know, most of those don't become collocations. They're just individual things, and you try to use them, and people go, "Oh, you're very clever," because they won't know it's copyright Philip Adams. Yeah. So those are some issues around that. Yeah. So just in terms of that, reading advice, I at this stage would stick to your conventional writers. So your more popular, less literary novelists would tend to be more conventional language users. I don't want to discourage you from you know, interesting literature though. But just be aware if you go into that, there are those issues. Yeah. Cool. Sorry to interrupt. All right, get into it and see what you can find with those errors.
So is this wrong because the operation?
Skype as a U.
Market operation without the space has to be space and
Edit your
operation.
piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Operation,
Okay,
so it's plural.
Yeah. Should be plural.
And sorry, and Linda, you don't have a piece at this stage because you were not there on
Not
the first.
only one market operation, this is many we mentioned in this article. It's why
No worries.
And
And Gina, are you there? Because I can't see you. Okay, your camera's still not working, I don't think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, what is PS? Wrong part of speech.
Ah,
Part of speech, yes. So,
is that right?
yeah, wrong part of speech.
Yeah, right.
So
Look, a
it should be now,
suggestion.
not
What if you get out of Skype and come back in? Sometimes it just, you know, when you recall, yeah, maybe shut it down and come back in again.
Get exposed. So it's
See what
problem
happens.
with the problem.
Yeah.
You should be able to. Yeah.
Appropriate alternative for
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so. Just like you did before. I think if you ring me, I think you'll come back into this conversation because that's what you did.
having
To be explored.
Isn't that what you did before? Or did you just answer the call?
To be exploited, yeah. To get exploited. Get is more, more speaking, I guess.
yeah,
To
right.
be,
So to get or
to
become
have exploited, to make, to be, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, I do. Yeah. Oh, look. Yeah, look, alright, look,
Yes,
just,
as he
let's
said.
play it safe. Stay there.
Or have express your
Stay there, and I'll just assume you're there. Yeah,
To be
yeah.
exploited, to be, I guess.
Right. I actually though, no, hang on, you probably need to see the board, so I think come back, try coming back in again and we'll see what happens.
right. So
You will need to see the board and I'm going to show
Yeah, I
you
guess yes.
the screen. So just shut down, come back and I'll be back in a minute. In the meantime, yeah, because what I'm going to do now is write up some of the errors that people have made, so you're going to need to see the board.
We don't need to use this one.
Red, what is red?
What's the
Red,
Sorry, Renfrey, bit of an obstacle.
Suggestion maybe, not suggestion. No, we have
suggest or imply?
However, a broader inquiry suggested.
Isn't that
Suggest.
wrong word? So
I guess it has to be verb here. Broader inquiry suggest.
no. Should is the verb, main verb. When this also should be
Broader
looking right.
inquiry.
So
Broader
suggestion.
inquiry suggests more issue.
It's not suggest.
Suggest more. Suggest.
It's
Broader inquiry suggests.
Not suggest. Should be imply or something.
Yes, Gina, I can see you now. Can you hear me?
Maybe wrong.
Yeah, that's good. Beautiful. And you can see the board, all right?
As
I've lost you again.
Shiny doesn't fit into
Yes.
this
What's
context.
wrong with your camera there?
Today, so it should be sunny, not shiny. So
You can see me?
the suggestion doesn't fit into this sentence or this context.
parts, just more
So
I guess we have to replace this word by another one. What you said before?
Well, I would say imply.
Imply, yeah.
Yeah.
What if we can figure out
Or
what's the problem?
Yeah, then
bring.
quiet comment.
Yeah,
I'm going to put a number of examples up on the board, and it might be that. And then if it's still not that, I'll tell you the answer.
Or imply. Having just having more issues. Yeah. Just with. Not even now. But any verb just occupation. They looked into. Yeah, that's correct. You shouldn't have used that.
So
yeah,
we just cross.
Yeah, the cross. Yeah.
Okay.
The capitalism.
The capitalism, right? It's a punctuation.
Capital in proper small letter, not capital letter. Capital.
Yeah, it's a small letter.
Smaller, yeah.
PS.
Yes, past sentence. PP. No. Yes. Wrong part of speech. Wrong part of speech.
Capitalism or
enclosed cross is losing regulation benefit.
Ah, okay, I got that.
Capitalist.
Well, we may get rid of here. So the capitalism pursuing higher profit or cost at whatever cost results in capitalism. Not so.
Then contrary to
So we don't need to.
Yes, wrong part of speech. No objects.
Yeah. So it should be different than the form of the capitalism.
Is it verb?
Also, this,
Capitalism
yeah.
is forcing or forces higher profit at whatever cost. This has to be a verb.
ideas that are not
Capitalism is
Yeah,
or
just capitalism.
or
Just
just without, yeah, just
Yeah.
This one.
But it doesn't, yeah, this one doesn't mean.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Contrary to this,
Redundancy or something like that.
You can't. Who's that?
Higher profit.
Linda, you can't read the board?
Rejoicing.
But it's person, we have to use is, isn't it?
No, because rejoicing is the main verb, so the capitalism pursuing higher profit.
Is it any closer now?
But this has to be, it's noun.
Yes.
This has to be verb. Is it verb? Person.
Okay. But pursuing higher
I can see
profit.
the board. I can see the board in my
Why do you-
camera, and
why
it's
do you
fitting
want it?
inside the camera. So yeah.
Yeah.
Alicia, can you see the whole
Is
board?
it a collocation? Person high profit, is it collocation?
It's a little bit faint, is it?
What is it? Is it noun, verb, and what? Higher.
Yeah. I've changed my pen. I'm using a darker pen. We'll see how we
Connection.
go.
This is yeah, noun, verb, adverb. My head is
Yes,
very
that's
bad.
right.
I don't see the connection between.
Is that better? Can you read that now?
I don't see the connection between Chinese.
Right, darker pen.
Advantage. No advantages is coming.
Yeah.
Of a free market.
You're only seeing part of the board there, aren't you?
Free market, yeah.
A free market.
I'm not sure.
It also
Yeah. Okay. What happened the last few days
should be there few weeks.
Yeah.
like listing 3 different.
Yeah, articles. Always encourage
Which F verb form?
Yeah, it should be just verb simple, not the
Preparation. Sources for this resolution. Then comes push for this.
For example.
yeah, no.
Yes.
Although the trade and again number
Yeah, rate, characterize.
and wages and wages.
Okay.
And the new
Yeah.
position.
Verb form again. Will be remind in the will be remind at ed and the end, yeah, because b and ed remind.
Just remind, yeah, will remind.
Or will
be reminded.
or will remind.
Will remind, remain.
I guess will remind without be. Or will be reminded. But I guess it's will remind.
Yeah, just will remind.
Will remind.
Which means punctuation is
Not have.
he is expecting
Proposition PS. Help to improve. No.
No, just have.
when you say is that
It's PS. PS.
Yeah.
Can you read that?
government
Preposition.
when you use
And languages will not help.
Four.
So, Gina, can you read it? Okay.
Help. Unemployment will help.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah.
Tax calculated.
Right. So Linda, so therefore it might be if you log off and log back onto Skype, it might be clearer.
Do employment.
You know, just like a bad call, if you log out, sometimes it gets better. Don't know.
So,
All right, we'll
talk to
go
someone.
through these in a second. Can I just pass around an attendance list, please?
Help
Just
for
write your name
something.
there.
Help
Thank
for
you.
something to somebody.
All right, now,
Something.
I've got some of the problems on the board. And now it's clear, beautiful. And your mission, your job, is to look at that board together in your group. Have a pen to the table. And anything you think you can correct, Kai, can you touch that one? And beautiful. All right.
Is it yours?
first thing is this.
First three of it. Okay. There's at least one problem in each of those phrases. They're not necessarily full sentences. Okay. There's at least one problem that comes out of the writing that I know that lots of people make that kind of error. So
The Australian government.
So your job, I'm going to unplug this so we're a bit safer. Your job is to carefully weave your way through the crowd and come and with a different colour pen, change the sentence. Now just the rules of the game here are, if you think that's wrong, don't rub it out, put a line through it and write what's correct, or insert it, but don't remove anything that's already there. Somebody else might come up and correct your correction because they don't think you're right, all right? So what we want to do is to be able to track back and see a record of the correction or the correction or the correction, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So yeah, don't rule anything out, just put a neat line through it and write your opinion. But yeah, have a discussion. It's all very much about talking about these things, and before you come up, have a chat with each other, see what you think. You can disagree, and then two people come up and write different things, doesn't matter. All right? It's just a way of getting things, yeah. Yes. Okay, can you read the bottom ones, Linda? Can you read the bottom ones?
Against the Australian government.
Yeah, which, no. Yeah, are you seeing the top half or the bottom half? Ah, you see the left half. Right, okay, well I'll read them through. Australian government is trying to remove the penalty rates. The penalty rates. So it says Australian government is trying to remove the penalty rates. Actually, there's a title as well. It says Eyes of Greedy. The title. Right. Okay. So, yeah. So let's put it number 1, 2, number 3, 4. Yes, the businesses are taking advantages of free market.
And I guess the eyes as well, titled The Eyes of Reason.
And fourth one, this is a fraudulent reasoning. This is a fraudulent reasoning. Fourth one, this is a fraudulent, from the word fraud, fraud like trick, lie. This is a fraudulent reasoning. Yeah. Number five, they opposed the Royal Commission previously.
Number 3 is from this.
Number 6, why politicians are dishonest. That's the correction. You said it the correct way. 7, they demand more, comma, therefore they lobby the government hard.
Of every.
I'm not sure.
Therefore they lobby the government hard. So if you're ready, guys, come up. Just ignore what I'm doing. Come up and write a correction. The secret is come up and do the easy ones, you see. Just... Yes? Good. Good. That's enough, Lewis. Just 2 or 3 per table, because that's great. Well done. Number 8, the proposed tax cuts, Skypers, the proposed tax cut causes reservation about causes reservation about. And number 9, this encourages companies pushing for less regulation.
Reason.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's right.
Alright. So have a think about them and yay, Gina, I can see you now. The camera's come back. Yay, hello, you're back. Beautiful. Alright, go for it, guys. Every table, come up and you probably, that board is a bit wobbly, you just have to hold it while you write.
From, try from.
Where?
Free market. try wrong.
No. No.
Why are
Yes, yes,
politicians?
That's it, that's me.
This is what they
They demand more
hot. Very hot. Very hot. Just go
they go. No. Because if there is no need for compromise. No need
You guys do.
Пожалуйста,
You guys do.
Robert can be both. They love the government. Hard. I'm hard. It's rather government.
in the sixth way, this is one art.
It's not like work hard or study hard. It's the same. Very hard.
Okay, what have we got? Number 4 needs a bit of work. Number 6, number 7, number 8.
Yes, no words.
It's not distracted.
Yes.
If it's top tense,
Yes, reason. No reason. Because they have IEG and could be.
I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add another one because it. So, any thoughts about that one? Krish, where are you? Did you come in the door before?
This issue remains.
This issue.
Issues. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And it's because I am too many words say, to say the same thing.
But then remember is not
Take another one. Made mistake is written.
because
Keep remembering.
they keep remaining, so it's going to be there.
Because in the article, must be careful. No, because not here in writing. In the article, yeah, it's not capitalized for sure. And before that, they
If it's past tense, it's closed.
If it is S for tax cards, then this is cards without S.
Closed.
Cards without S.
You propose.
Reading it.
Discussing. Hunch.
Because of big business.
Skype, can you hear me? Yeah, good. All right. We'll come back to all right, just while I remember those people who are here, just a practical thing. That door downstairs, unfortunately, there's a couple of people who came and the door was locked. Now they rang my phone, and I have it on loud, but for some reason, maybe we were discussing something or whatever, it didn't seem to ring or I didn't hear it. So unfortunately they've gone home. It's a major problem for them. That's the problem with this building. Dozens of different people use it and they walk out and they lock the door. Right? So you may find the door locked. To avoid this problem, I mean, certainly ring me, but if for some reason, I don't know why it didn't come through, I didn't notice it, can you get the number of the person next to you, or probably a couple of people, right? So if you try me and the door's still locked, ring desperately somebody else, so the chances are you'll make contact with somebody and then they can race down and unlock the door. Because I really don't want this to happen again.
Sorry, John, but there used to be a landline number for here on the door.
There is a landline, isn't there, for
because we used
this?
to be, I tried
Yes.
it before. So
Right, it is. Yeah, that's true. Probably sorry. It's probably here somewhere. That's another one to ring. Let's get the number.
the number is, it used to be on the door.
Is it on the door?
Yeah, downstairs on the door.
Ah, that's right. It is downstairs on the door. It says Activist Centre.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. Yeah, 8231 6982. So I guess if we hear the phone ringing next door, if somebody could run in and answer that and let the poor homeless person in. Right? Yeah, that's very unfortunate. Yeah, we don't want that happening again. All right, let's go through this and see how we might solve some of these issues. Yes, all right, that's a good point. A capital there, a capital for titles. It's really an article issue. I mean, they're talking about the greedy. Think of the rich, the poor. Oh, good. The rich, the poor, the destitute, the lame, the blind, the crippled, you know, that category of people. Have you seen that before? Yeah, so in this case, the greedy. Yeah. So that is one, you know, the article is tricky and there are lots of rules about the article, but that's an important rule. A group of people, so you've got an adjective here, haven't you? The greedy, the rich, the poor, the blind, the confused, and it means those people in society who are rich, blind, confused, lame. Lame means you can't walk, whatever. Alright? So if you put the and then an adjective that refers to people, we assume it's about a group of people in society who have that characteristic. So that's one. Yes, how many Australian governments? Really, in terms of the national government, there is only one. And therefore it always has a the. Yeah, that's an interesting one because you can regard, if you're trying to write officially, and you might put a capital G, like, yeah. So if the federal government is writing as the government, they'll tend to put a capital. But if you're just commenting on the government, usually a small g. Yeah. So that's not really necessary. This is the key. Good. No, the. So the crossing out is correct. Now, the reason I put it up, the more general rule it illustrates is we're talking or writing generally, aren't we? So most of the time in English, when we're talking generally about something, we write in the plural, all right? We write it in the plural with no article. No article I will symbolise like that on the board. When I write that, it means no article. All right, so refugees are under a great deal of stress currently in Australia. Students are finding course fees becoming more and more difficult. I'm talking generally about students, and I'm talking generally about course fees. I don't put the students. If I said the students, somebody would say, well, which particular group do you mean?
In this field.
Yeah, like is it the group at TAFE, or is it the group at Adelaide Uni, or the group at Flinders Uni? It'd be the students at Flinders University. You know? So if you put a modifier after student, at Flinders University studying sociology, the students at Flinders University studying sociology, right? It's the, isn't it? Yeah. Now, as I've said to diploma people, think of these words in English. This, that, them, there, these, those. They all begin with the, don't they? That's not an accident. Because 7,000 years ago, before any of the modern European languages, there was an Indo-European language, and it's all of those words, including the, are called demonstratives. Demonstratives, that's the linguistic grammatical category. And what it means is you demonstrate. This, something close. That, singular. Those, plural. It's like pointing, isn't it? Pointing far away to a particular thing. Not general, it's particular, special. This thing, that, those, them, that. Right? All that comes from this basic function. So one of the key things just to understand about the, which bothers everybody, and it's the most common word in English, remember 6% of any text, is that it's a demonstrative. It is a pointing thing at quite a particular thing. So if we're speaking generally, you're not going to use it, are you? And we tend to put things in the plural also. So just that is a common problem. I hope I've explained it sufficiently. Just keep your eye out in your own writing. If anybody wants more explanation or a question about anything as we go, please sing out. Sing out doesn't literally mean sing. You can if you like. It'd be very beautiful. You can sing a bit of Puccini or Verdi or something. That just means call out, Okay, so after what I've just said to you, what about the next?
Just business.
Yeah. So no, that is it. Businesses, because we're talking about all businesses, not the businesses in Adelaide, that particular group, right across the country. Businesses are taking advantage. Yeah, there's the collocation. Taking advantage. No S, correct. Gone. Yeah, so that's something to notice about collocations, isn't it? I mentioned, when we're looking at collocations, think about them grammatically. Don't just underline it, oh, there's a collocation. Look at it, okay, that's a verb, noun, because advantage is a noun. It's a verb plus noun collocation. And you might want to know this, is that noun singular or plural? In this case it's singular. So take notice of those sorts of things when you're collecting your collocations. And look, taking advantage of, actually there's the collocation. And that gets included, isn't it? Preposition. It's really a 3 word preposition. And that's a nice example actually of, where is the boundary of the collocation? They're packages. Where's the wrapping? The wrapping paper is there, and it's there, and it's not there. You'll always have an of. You'll always have it. And that's one way you can, help remember your preposition. Take advantage of, take advantage of, take advantage of. Just remember it's a package. Makes it a bit easier. Now, free market. In Australia, how many free markets? It's one big one, isn't it? It's just you produce something, you put it out there, it's one market. Anyone in the country can buy it. It's one market. Therefore, the free market. Yeah. So some of you I know from economics accounting background, it's always got the. All right. This one. Fraudulent reasoning. I think that the article mentioned reasoning, I think, didn't it? This comes directly from the article. In other words, a thought process, reasoning. So the writer meant that, so let's keep that. Fraudulent's fine. This is the problem. Right? You can't have a reasoning. Now, the reason I put it up here is it demonstrates another common problem, and that is, do you remember what I wrote before? The gerund? That's a gerund, isn't it? Yeah. So let's look at it without the ing. Reason, that's a verb. When you reason about something, you think about it logically, you argue, A plus B equals C, logic. That's your argument. Alright, so from the verb, in English, often we can add ing. It's the simplest way of making a noun. Smoke, smoking. Walk, walking. Think, thinking. You get gerunds, don't you? Thinking is important before you speak. Thinking. Alright, now, when we do that, here's the rule. Gerunds, I'd say almost always, I'm going to write almost always. I always hedge a little bit. I'm not going to say always, but always have no definite, not even definite, no article. Right? We don't say, think about the simpler ones. A smoking. Do we say a smoking?
No.
A thinking? A jumping? No. Why not? Because all of these things, when we add ing and make a gerund, usually it's an abstract thing, isn't it? It's just a general phenomenon. It's abstract. It's not a single pen, a computer. It's not a concrete noun. It's an abstract noun. And abstract nouns, often in English, tend to not have articles. Certainly with a gerund, usually you don't have an article. So there's another. Notice quite a few of these problems are article problems, aren't they? And at this level, this is often what you're grappling with and struggling with, the article issue. So that's an important tendency. Let's not call it an absolute rule, but it's a strong tendency. If you're writing a gerund, put your money down on the fact that there will be no article. 97% of the time you'll be right. There might be a few exceptions. So that slang, that gets the chop. Right? That is axed metaphor, isn't it? I'm going to point out slang and idioms as they occur to me. So this is fraudulent reasoning. No article because it's a gerund, and most gerunds are abstract and therefore uncountable. N-U, uncountable nouns. Uncountable means we don't put them in plurals and they don't have articles. Like earlier, luggage, we don't say a luggage, we don't say luggages, do we? Alright. They opposed the Royal Commission previously. Yeah, look, capitals, this is an interesting issue, because if you look at the original article, no capitals were there. And personally, I would put capitals for that. You know, put it this way, 10, 20 years ago, it would have always been capitalised. Every language is changing, and most languages are getting a bit more casual. Is that true of your native language? Getting a bit more casual? And, you know, capitals and certain punctuation is dropping out and other things like this. And here's a case. But, yeah, a lot of writers will still write. It's a very formal process by the government, and it tends to get capitals. I also noticed he wrote Prime Minister without capitals. And personally, I would always put capitals on that. Most writers will. So he's a writer with a particular style, he tends to drop them, but I would advise you not to. You know, put them in. So I wrote that up to point that out to you, that I think it's better practice to put them. And this, of course...
It's like a title.
That's right, it's like a title, yeah. It's like a judge, you call them justice. Or even Mr. and Mrs, you could have capitals, don't you? Yeah, and it's a title of a process, so I'd capitalise it. What I wanted to do, and no one's picked it up, that's previously, and I was talking with somebody during the week. What part of speech is it? Adverb, right. Now I think many of you will be finding adverbs a bit tricky. Where do they go in English? And you can get quite complex, like if it's an adverb of manner or time or place, they've all got slightly different rules to them. Yeah? But the simplest rule of all, which most of the time will, here's a bit of slang, it will get you out of jail, it will solve the problem, right? It'll get you out of jail, is if you put your adverb close to the verb, and usually just before it. They previously opposed the Royal Commission. So, I mean, what does an adverb do? It modifies a verb, doesn't it? So it's the brain is going to process it better if it's next to the thing that it's modifying, yeah? And it sounds a bit more natural if it's in front of it. They previously opposed the Royal Commission, yeah. You know, people will know what you mean if it's at the end, but it just sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
A bit, here's a bit of slang, a bit clunky. Clunky, what's something that sound. That's a clunk. When you drop something, it's clunk, yeah? So it's not very graceful, it's not very elegant, something's a bit clunky, doesn't look good, doesn't sound good. Alright, yeah, this one, it's the old question problem, isn't it? So you got a question, and then your auxiliary has to come, and then your subject, and then your complement, whatever, the rest of the sentence. It's still at higher levels, often an error. And a habit often. Right, so, question word, why, what, how, then your auxiliary, then your subject, right? Then your complement, or in some cases a verb if you need it. Why did Joe quit? It might be a verb. Depends on the structure of the sentence. We can do some exercises on any of this stuff if you like. Just let me know if you say, if you'd like more practice on this one, because I'm always getting my questions wrong and you just want to... Even if you know it theoretically, it's a different thing, isn't it? You can know it theoretically, and when you speak, back to old habits. So often we need to do the exercise and drill them just to shift the habit a bit. So I'm happy to do any... Just let me know, either private message, group message or whatever if you want, or just come and see me. Further practice in any of this stuff. Because just mentioning it is probably not enough. It's a bit halfway there, but we need to do more. Yeah, beautiful. All right, somebody picked it up. Excellent. That was really the problem. It's a punctuation problem. They demand more. That is an independent clause. You could put a full stop or a capital. Therefore, they lobby the government hard. That, therefore, is not a conjunction. Conjunctions join sentences like and or but or so, yet. Right? That is not a conjunction. It is an adverb. Therefore, however, thus, hence, all these nice logical joining words. Yeah? Therefore, thus, just means therefore, it's a nice one to use. hence also means therefore. Yeah. And you need to so you can't just use it as a joint. There's an independent clause. They lobby the government hard. Here's another independent clause. They demand more. If you're going to join two independent clauses without a full stop, you need a conjunction here. There's no conjunction. It's using an adverb. So therefore, you have to have a full stop or a semicolon. What's the difference? The semicolon is quite a nice thing to use sometimes. If the two ideas are closely related, logically or in terms of meaning, and they are, aren't they? I mean, this thing, therefore this, it's logically close. Use a semicolon. And that tells the reader the next bit is very logically related to the thing I've just said. Yeah? It's quite an elegant thing if you can use it. It's like quite mature and elegant writing if you can get control of that. But the simpler one, if you're not sure, full stop, capital, therefore. So same with however. And that is a disease at the moment, the last 15 years. Natives writing however and comma however. In the same way. It's wrong, wrong, wrong. And you open up newspapers, you'll see it everywhere. It's actually incorrect. I mean, eventually it will become the new rule, right? In 20 years, people like me, fussy old bastards like me, will give up or die or something, you know, and it will become the new rule. Language changes, sure. But until then, we should observe it. All right.
You said therefore, hence, and which other word?
Yeah, we can get a bit of a list. Why don't we write? So there are lots of them, but common things that logically link. Therefore, thus, hence. So they all mean the same thing. And it's good to have a little collection, so you don't say therefore, therefore, therefore. It's a nice little menu. You can rotate them around. That one's the most formal. So it depends, if you're being a little less formal, maybe you don't use it. And then I just mentioned things like however, and things like moreover. Moreover means, just be careful with this one, because moreover means you're going to mention a more important point than the one you just mentioned. That's why the word more is there. So, you know, be careful of that one, because it's not, if you just said additionally or furthermore, these are all adverbs, right? And they all, notice they've all got like full stop, capital, and they'll all have commas. These things are called sentence adverbials. And they're called sentence adverbial because they begin a sentence and they're about the whole, they modify the whole sentence. And you have a comma after sentence adverbials, you always have your comma. And as I say, you can have a sentence here, and if it's logically related, you can go with any of these. You can, you know, and if you do that, you'll need a small letter there, won't you? A lowercase. Yeah, so those are some. The list is longer than that, Lewis, but they're just some.
Well, I had a similar experience about as to using semicolon.
Yeah.
When you flip over the screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Thanks. Well, yeah, number 7. They demand more. So when I wrote an email, very similar sentence in the email, a very similar sentence, very short and simple, but it was kind of reason and result.
Yes.
Of in the one sentence, I wrote the sentence like this: they demand more, semicolon.
Yeah.
They lobby that government hard. So I omitted.
Yeah.
Intentionally omitted the therefore,
Yeah.
because it makes it much simpler.
Right.
But one of the recipients told me that, hey Chris, you don't need to use, you don't have to use semicolon in this case. It's pretty neutral. So putting just comma, that just makes more would be much better.
No, because in that case, if you had nothing there and just a comma,
Yeah.
you've got an independent clause and an independent clause.
Yes, that's correct.
You've got to, if you to join two independent clauses, you've got to have a conjunction,
Exactly.
or otherwise you have two separate sentences.
Yes, but yeah,
You
he knew
cannot
that.
do it just with a semicolon.
Yeah, he knew that, but what he
Yeah.
told me was, yeah, Chris, you're totally correct
Yeah.
in terms of grammar,
Yeah.
but no one used that. No one write connect sentence right. That's what he said.
No one connects sentences with a semicolon. you
Yes.
mean. Well,
I haven't seen any usage
Yeah.
usage of semicolon in any corporation email so far.
Yeah, me
Okay.
neither.
I see them all the time. I guess it depends on the genre. Maybe not in the corporate world. If you're aiming to be just short, sharp, and clear,
Yeah.
it's a slightly more complex structure, so you have to process it a little bit more. Certainly in academic writing, you see it all the time.
All right.
Yeah, so it could be the genre and the audience that's
Yeah.
controlling that to some degree. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you want plain English, what we call plain English, just that totally direct, plain and clear, so that somebody reads something once and they're absolutely clear, you could possibly avoid it. It's a more sophisticated, more complex
Yeah.
So
structure.
it gives you more information, as you said. The
Yeah.
semicolon is telling you that the next sentence is closely related logically to the first.
It is, yeah. I mean, I think it also depends on the literacy level of the people you're writing to and what they're used to as well. Like in academic writing, of course, high level, and people are used to it, so they just use it. Yeah, I agree, Lewis. It does contain that extra information. Okay, the proposed tax cut or cuts, it depends. Okay, causes. Yeah, look, my issue here was this word. Now, it causes reservation. I know what you mean. It's just a collocation. Like reservation, you don't cause reservations. Create, yeah. I was thinking of gives, tax cut. Let's make it tax cut.
Phrase.
Gives rise to. That might be new. It gives rise to, just sort of, it rises up almost sort of, kind of spontaneously, but caused by something else. Sorry, creates, should be, shouldn't it? Because it's, we're saying singular, cut. You could say brings about. The problem with brings about is you've got about here, reservations about. Brings about, reservations about. Sounds a bit weird. Sounds a bit clunky. So, but in another context. But my more general point is there's a lot of words in English about cause. And cause doesn't always collocate with the thing you want to talk about, with the result. And so certain things like public processes, you know, what we're talking about here is the public having some reservations. That's right, it's always, oh, I have reservations about that. I have doubts. You never say, I have doubt about that. It's always plural, even if it's only one doubt. It's just the fixed structure, the collocation. I have doubts. I have reservations. All right, just always pluralise that. That's the collocation. Plural, fixed, like this one. But the opposite. That's always singular. This one's always plural. Yeah, so those things would collocate with that particular sort of result. I just want to bring that up, and I do have, diploma people would know it, you know, the exam dictionary, Longman exam dictionary with all those words about cause and effect. There's a nice resource that I'll just make a note of that I can show you a couple of pages of, and if you want it, I can photocopy it, and if you know, it'll be a bit costly in terms of photocopying, but if people do want it, you know, at 10 cents a page and 20 pages or whatever, a couple of dollars, and I can, you know, make some copies for you. I'll bring along a sheet or two next week, and you can see a sample, and if you think, you know, you get something out of it, it's something for diploma that, yeah, we use quite a bit. I recommended it, and I think it should be a constant companion, actually, to get control of just lots of words about lots of functions and concepts, like cause and effect, result, hedging, advantages, disadvantages, all sorts of different functions. But just be aware of that. Okay, where, if you don't have the exam dictionary, a resource you might use, and it's big, a thesaurus, thesaurus.com, all your synonyms, you know, and you type in cause and you'll get dozens. One of the problems is you sort of get too many and they're not explained. The nice thing about the exam dictionary, you get a dozen, or probably a couple of dozen, and there's lots of examples and explanations about each one. So you know how to use it. That's why I think it's such a good resource. So the Longman Exam Dictionary. It's not the whole dictionary, it's just this section in the middle. I think it's endemic, so you go and have a look at it. But that's your online resource, but you know, it doesn't have much guidance. It's this huge, rich treasure box. That's what thesaurus actually means, treasure. It's this treasure of all the words in the language, but you know, how the hell do you use this? What you can do, of course, now we're starting to build a bit of knowledge about resources. Thesaurus.com, what are the collocations? Just the word, remember that resource last week? So you get a word that you think might be right, and then I'm not sure, let's have a look at the collocations. Yeah, that's the one I want, or no, that's not going to work, you know. So what we're going to do over time is build up a series of tools, and often they're most powerful when you're using them together. Okay.
Sorry, John.
Yeah.
About the reservations.
Yeah.
So it's as a mental activity, like thoughts.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Doubt.
Yeah, doubts.
Then how can we say? Is there any doubts?
No. Is there any doubt?
Is there any doubt?
That's fixed in singular.
Yeah.
Crazy English, huh? Yeah. Is there any doubt about that? No. There is no doubt about that. Not there are no doubts about that. It's fixed in the singular. Yeah, good point. A contrasting fixed structure. This encourages companies, yes. Again, at this level, it's one common category problem of, all right, is it the gerund, pushing, or is it the infinitive verb? And even very, very good speakers and writers often still have this issue. It depends on this word here. What you've got is two verbs here. You've got verb 1, verb 2. And it depends on this one, what that one does. So with encourage, you always encourage someone to do something. Yep. Other words like give up, verb 1, give up, smoking, drinking, eating too much chocolate. Yeah? So you get a gerund. These things, there's no rhyme or reason. Rhyme or reason. Idiom. Invented by William Shakespeare, that one. Rhyme or reason. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no method. No pattern. Rhyme. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You've just got to learn them. I do have a list. I've given it to diploma, but we could always revisit that. Probably be quite useful. Alright, so there's a few issues coming up here, more general issues. I'll just write down infinitive gerund. Would people like to do more on that one?
Yes, that's exactly my problem.
Yeah, you wouldn't be alone there, Lewis. It plagues many people. Plague noun, but here's a verb. It plagues many people. It bothers lots and lots. Yes, and that one, again, trying to demonstrate a general principle. That's what we call a stative verb. Alright, so some of the verbs I've been talking about, smoking, jumping, thinking, you know, some of those are physical, material verbs, aren't they? Smoking, jumping, mental verb, thinking. Alright, so here's another category we haven't talked about yet, a stative verb. Now, a stative verb, there are different kinds of stative verbs, but they are usually just about existence or characteristic when you're talking about characteristics of things. And something remains, we don't put stative verbs in the continuous form, usually, most of the time. And certain emotional mental verbs, love. Not I am loving, you know, I love you, not I am loving you. I am loving you means again and again and again and again and again. If you're eating a meal and you say, I'm loving this, that you can do it. but that's an emphasis. Like each mouthful I take, I'm loving every bite, right? Or I'm really loving this film, or I'm loving this music. Every note is really good. So you do it for emphasis, but it's unusual. Most of the time, love, hate, envy, etc., they're in the non-continuous form, just the simple form. That's another area. Stative verbs, again, diploma people, we've done them, haven't we? But probably worth a revisit at some point. Yeah. So it might be a question you ask yourself as you're writing, even before we actually do all the work on it. Just be aware. Really, a lot of this stuff in the first few lessons, I'm just putting flags on it, little warning points, so that alerting you to the key problems. We'll try and do work on these over the weeks, but just at least be aware of the issues and look, go and explore them yourself. From if it's the first time, or even if it's not, and I'm reminding you, go and have a bit of a Google, stative verbs versus continuous. You'll get lists. You'll get lists of what is a stative verb, explanations, some lists of the key stative verbs, etc. Any of these things. The gerund versus the infinitive, you'll get lists. It's all out there. It's all out there. You've just got to pursue it. But we can work our way through this stuff, and again, it's up to you. Pretty much feedback from you, which bits you'd like to pursue.
Can you explain a little bit more about in the 9th sentence? Encourage companies to push or pushing?
No, to push. To push. So that's the infinitive. Yeah, after encourage, you always have the infinitive, not the gerund. Like my example, give up, you have the gerund. Give up smoking, give up drinking. But after encourage, you always have the infinitive. And there's no rule, really. It's just you've got to learn the pattern. Here's an important point about it. Most verbs will have the infinitive after it. There's a little bunch of about 35 or so, 35 to 40, which you need the gerund. So if you're not sure, write the infinitive. Right? You'll be much more likely to be correct. Because there's only about 35 verbs in the language which need the gerund for. So a lot of it's about gambling, isn't it? Yeah. All right. I've got more, but I think that's enough for tonight to absorb. Any questions on anything I've covered thus far? All right. With your corrections, I'm happy if you've tried to correct them. I can collect it and have a look at your corrections and see, if you've got it right. I'll look at it again. And if you just mark maybe with a really, probably most of it with your group, you've got correct. But if you can put a big red ring or some sort of highlight around the ones that you're still not clear on. If you're totally clear, if you reckon you've worked it out, I don't need to see it again. All right? But I don't want to leave any error behind, leave you wondering, what's right, what's wrong. So just mark 1 or 2 or 3 or however many still remain a bit of a mystery or ambiguous, uncertain, and hand it up. And Skype us if you want to send me anything. Resend me the writing, and we'll look at it. I'll look at it and get it back to you. All right. Now I reckon I got half to 2/3 of that writing. Obviously, you're going to use your time and money best if you do the activity and get the feedback, and then we'll have lots more errors and lots more to talk about as well, and I'll get a much better sense of you, your writing, your language profile, etc. So I'd encourage you to do the activity because, for all those reasons. So don't know if we'll have a writing that will come out of today, but whenever it comes up, please have a go. Get it to me as soon as possible. All right. Break time, I think. We're 8:15. Let's have a break for 10. And we'll see you in 10. All right. Back in 10 seconds.
Could it paste now?
Yeah, people need to pay. Yeah,
I have to pay
take-
144
Yeah.
last time.
it's all this.
So like last time.
Yes,
but I
that's
need to
right.
switch.
Thank you, Olga. So that is 144. Okay, so now you need $400. Little kangaroo here. It's Tandan Yang. I don't know if you've got a dollar. I've got two.
But I guess one anyway.
There we go. That sorts it out, doesn't it? Okay, wait 1 second, I'll just make sure I write that down.
Actually, do you have spare pen?
Spare back.
What's our date today? The 15th, are we?
15, yeah,
Thanks.
15.5. It's,
Good.
oh, thank you. This is very nice.
Yeah.
If I cross our guy, it's
Many, yes.
many, many of.
But hang on, it's shopping, which is uncountable, so we have to say, best way to do it is a great deal of EAL.
Yeah.
That's your most formal way of saying lots of, because it's an uncountable.
Yeah.
Yeah, you-
Unnecessary.
Yeah, you can't have many shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great deal of unnecessary shopping.
Yeah. Many. Here again, not many.
That's right. Yeah,
The
lots
same-
of. Yeah, same problem.
A great
It's too
deal of-
spoken. So
But
here.